Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
When you hire a new head coach, what the Browns will do for the first time since 2020, there are a lot of variables that fly around your football team while you're looking for a coach and after you have found that coach. The one thing that is guaranteed to happen is that there are going to be players on this roster that do not benefit from a coaching change. Maybe they were brought in to do a specific thing. Maybe they like a different approach. Maybe they're too attached to the old way of doing things, which would be a first for the Cleveland Browns since expansion history. Haven't really had a coach long enough to where people could be attached to, but that might be the case for some players, right? Maybe they're just Stefanski guys and they're just going to stick with Stefanski. Maybe that's not the case. But nonetheless, that is inevitable whenever there is a new head coach in the building. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about players that I think could struggle when it comes to adjusting to a new head coach and a new vision, especially on offense. Now, some of these guys are on defense. Now, we don't know exactly what's going to happen on defense. So that's the difficult part, right? There's been reports that Jim Schwartz will stay as defensive coordinator. That's what the Browns want to do. There's been reports that maybe Jim Schwartz doesn't stay as defensive coordinator, depending on other hires that they may or may not make. We don't know there, but we can assume maybe if Jim Schwartz is gone, it's not going to be helpful to a couple of people on this roster. So that's what we're going to focus on. Who are the Browns that will struggle or could struggle because the Browns hired a new head coach? And talk about this, but give me 1 second to thank my sponsor, Sleeper.
Hey, have you ever heard of the Sleeper app? Well, here's a fun secret. It's not just for fantasy leagues. It's great for fantasy leagues. I personally have used it for years with my college friends to play fantasy football and to do pick'em leagues, all sorts of fun stuff like that. But the Sleeper app also gives you news. It gives you scores. You can also try to turn your football knowledge into real money. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players with more stats than any other daily fantasy app. Just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 100 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code WORSTTAKE and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Again, promo code WORSTTAKE. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Links are in the description.
I'm doing a list that's going to release probably later today or maybe even later this week about 5 Browns who I think will benefit from a coaching change. And this list is going to have some overlap with that list. And the overlap is going to be Cedric Tillman and Isaiah Bond because there is enough out there about them to where you could believe a coaching change could not be beneficial to them. There is also a lack of information out there about both of these guys to where you could suggest that a new coach would help them. So both arguments are going to be made over the next 24 hours on this channel because I truly don't know what to feel about Cedric Tillman or Isaiah Bond. These are intriguing prospects because you've seen good stuff from Isaiah Bond to suggest that he could be an NFL player. You've seen stuff from Cedric Tillman to suggest that he could be an NFL player. You have not seen the consistency that you wanted from Cedric Tillman. You've not seen the consistency that you wanted from Isaiah Bond. And also, you haven't seen the technical mastery that you would want to see from these players, right? Isaiah Bond, even for a rookie, even for judging him on a rookie scale, his routes are poor. Like there's just some very basic stuff he's not doing that he should have come out of college knowing how to do. I know people, like whenever you talk about a rookie, people's first instinct, whenever you have any criticism about their game, is that they're a rookie, but they also went to college, right? Like there are some things that you expect them to be able to do with a college football background coming into the NFL. It's not like they're just now learning football. Isaiah Bond doesn't get his head around on routes. Like he just will run a route and not look for the ball. In routes where he should be looking for the ball, right? Where he's expected to get the ball out of a break. So there's that concerning stuff with Cedric Tillman. He had a lot of similar issues his rookie year, but has cleaned it up over the last couple of years. Actually has found a couple of routes where he's really, really good at running them. The big thing with him is consistency and getting time to finish these routes because the offensive lines he's played with have not really allowed or afforded him a ton of time there. But there's something there with Cedric Tillman. There's something there with Isaiah Bond. I don't know if the change in head coach is going to highlight them because they could end up being lost in the shuffle. Ultimately, this is going to be a Andrew Berry and the new coach kind of decision that needs to be made here. But I can see easily how a new coach gets in here, looks at Cedric Tillman's unremarkable production over the last couple of years, and says to himself, we're just going to move on from this project. Or how somebody could look at Isaiah Bond and say to themselves, this wasn't somebody I thought was a really good prospect. He already has one strike on his record when it comes to the issue he was dealing with in the summer. And, you're watching some of the tape. He's not getting his head around. You might just decide it's not a project you want to take on. That could happen with both of these guys. And I know people are going to go, what? Isaiah Bond? Like that's going to, but I'm telling you, it's possible it can happen to Isaiah Bond. Hope it doesn't because I do think there's some upside in him. But it is certainly possible that somebody takes one look at Cedric Tillman, takes another look at Isaiah Bond and says, not for my offense, right? Isaiah Bond is a small, really thin, deep threat, which doesn't really fit every offense. If you're trying to do a push vertical scheme with Isaiah Bond, it's not really going to be successful, right? He really only works in certain kind of use cases. And in Cedric Tillman, who does have the body to fit what you want him to fit, comes out that Tennessee system where you don't really learn much about playing the game of football or playing wide receiver. And you end up in a situation where you could just look at Cedric Tillman and go, he's just far too behind for me to work with at this point. I think both those guys could have situations where a new coach comes in here and changes their life. There are also situations I could see easily where a new coach comes in here and says, not for me, and gets rid of him. The next player I think could struggle with a new head coach is Grant Delpit. Grant Delpit was kind of lost in the shuffle before Jim Schwartz got here. It's easy to forget that. But the second round pick in 2020, really did struggle early on in his career trying to fit into Joe Woods' system. And it wasn't really until the end of that season that Joe Woods figured out what Grant Delpit is. And then Jim Schwartz picked up that work and really went aggressive with it. See, the funny thing about Grant Delpit is that if you go off of his pre-draft profile, you will discover a player the complete opposite of who Grant Delpit is in the NFL, right? His pre-draft profile was that he was supposed to be this rangy free safety who struggled to play in the box and struggled to tackle, right? That was the big rep on Grant Delpit. He's not a good tackler. It's the actual opposite in his NFL career. Grant Delpit is a strong run defender, a strong box safety, and kind of a hybrid because he can cover every once in a while. He'll get in there in the slot and cover and do a fine job. But that's not like the bread and butter of what he does. The bread and butter of what he does is just get involved in the box. And for a Jim Schwartz scheme, there's going to be a lot of room for that. I do worry if somebody else comes in here, if we're looking for players on this defense that can be easily lost in the shuffle, Grant Delpit's the one that screams that to me because he plays this hybrid safety position. He's not really a strong safety. He's not really a free safety. He's kind of a slash in between the two, but he's still a starting safety on your team, right? Like you play him a lot of downs. You just move him around a lot. He's a lot of work to be able to figure out what you want to do with. And I think if somebody comes in here with something less custom for Grant Delpit and tries to fit him into a square or round peg, that's where we start to see the problems that Grant Delpit had early in his career kind of pop up again. So I'm hoping that for Grant Delpit that they do have a more specific plan for him if they cannot retain Jim Schwartz, but he could be a casualty of losing Jim Schwartz. And you could probably throw Ronnie Hickman in here too because of the simplicity of his role, because of what they can do use Grant Delpit with, and how the Browns use three safeties and they rotate them in and out. It puts Ronnie Hickman in a position where he just has to play post safety, and that's what he's done a really good job of. But again, if Grant stops to be effective, they put more on Ronnie Hickman, you can start to see how the top of that secondary kind of collapses inward, and becomes a problem if there is a change there at defensive coordinator. Devin Bush is another name that I would say you probably would be worried about without Jim Schwartz returning. If you can bring back Anthony Tarver, if you could bring back Jason Tarver, then yeah, Devin Bush back, I'm fine with that, right? But if you can't bring back Tarver, I get real nervous about Devin Bush at that point. He was not just a unsuccessful player before he got to Cleveland. He was a unplayable player before he got to Cleveland. Now, maybe some of the stuff that he's learned with Tarver sticks, but we're talking about paying a player without the main reason I think that he's been successful. Now we're ending up in kind of tricky territory, especially if there is a defensive change in what the Browns are doing. That's a lot of hoops that you're asking Devin Bush to be able to successfully navigate, without there being evidence that that's something that he's capable of. This might surprise you because this guy already struggled with the last coaching staff, but I think there's a chance that he could struggle even more with the next coaching staff. It's Jerry Jeudy. One, because Jerry Jeudy is one of those dudes who, if he gets started off on the wrong foot with you, ain't no telling. Ain't no telling how long that tumble gonna take, right? Some people, you get off on the wrong foot with them, they can shake that shit off and be fine with you eventually, pretty soon. Other people, you get off on the wrong foot with them, they do this, then that, and then it turns into a whole mess. You feel like you're navigating World War III by just simply trying to have a relationship with somebody, because they're the type of person you can't get off on the wrong foot about anything with. That's kind of what Jerry Jeudy has demonstrated himself to be. When somebody gets on the wrong foot of him, whether it be the media, whether it be national media members, local media members, it starts a tumble that doesn't stop with Jerry. And I think that's why a lot of people are just exhausted with Jerry Jeudy in general. Unfortunately for the Browns, Jerry Jeudy is clearly the most talented wide receiver on the roster right now. Like, when I watch the tape, I'm like, he could still play. You just got to get his mind right. And Kevin was one of those people who was willing to work with Jerry Jeudy and get his mind right and make sure he's on good standing with Jerry Jeudy, and do the extra work there. Because Jerry Jeudy was kind of Kevin's project, right? Like, Kevin loved Jerry Jeudy in the draft. Kevin wanted to trade for Jerry Jeudy multiple years. Jerry Jeudy was clearly a Kevin Stefanski baby. So when you talk about a player like that, right, who kind of needs that extra nurturing to be able to be who he can be, and then you put him in the Wild West environment of firing a coach that brought you in and then bringing in another one, you can see how Jerry Jeudy could be put in a situation where we see full-blown Denver Jerry Jeudy, even more than we saw it last year. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully they bring in somebody who has a vision for Jerry Jeudy. That plan works out, and Jerry Judy's back to getting 1,000 yards. That's the best case scenario for everybody involved. But I do worry about this Jerry Jeudy scenario and what we saw last year not being the bottom of the iceberg, but just the tip of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it ends there, especially with all the instability that we're introducing to Jerry Jeudy. The next guy I have here isn't because I think he's going to be bad next year. It's simply because I don't think he's going to get the targets that he had this year. Harold Fanan, right? Harold Fanan, let me look this up. But I know he led the team in targets, but I do believe he almost got like 120 targets or something ridiculous like that. That simply just is not going to be replicated again. One, because the Browns are likely going to draft some wide receivers, but two, yeah, the Browns gave him 107 targets. That is a ridiculous amount of targets for him to get, especially like when he only started like 13 games. You have to also consider that like there was a portion of the season where he wasn't getting targeted too much, and then he just exploded in like this. Yeah, he got 107 targets in 16 games with only 13 starts. I don't think he gets that many targets again. Just because it's unusual for a tight end this young to get that many targets in most offenses. Now, I might be wrong here. He is a special kind of hybrid of a player who could get the ball in multiple different ways. And maybe you hire a coach who uses him in different ways. But for Harold Fanan, I'm not going to look for the same amount of production next year. I'm just going to want more efficiency from Harold Fanan. So I expect a bit of a dip in his overall numbers as long as that comes with a significant increase in his efficiency. So that's why I have him on the list here of guys who could struggle, because I think he's going to be perceived as struggling because he's not going to replicate some of the numbers that he put up this year when it comes to his receiving stat line. But I do think that that's mainly like some of the crazy stuff that we're seeing with his stat line is partially due to the fact that he got so many targets this year because the Browns had so many injuries and so much inconsistency when it comes to the pass catcher side of this. Like Harold Fanan had 107 targets, which put him at like fifth amongst all tight ends. That's crazy. Like you look at the tight ends that are ahead of him. We're talking about like Travis Kelce, Tyler Warren, a first round pick, Trey McBride, and then that's it. Kyle Pitts, another first round pick from Atlanta. So a lot of production, but a lot of targets. I don't know if he gets that many targets again, especially if the Browns are trying to evolve on offense. But we'll see. We'll see. But that's it. Those are my guys that I think could struggle with a new coach. Let me know who you think in the comment section below will benefit or will struggle from a new coach being in the building. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.